So I have a story for you this morning about a man named Norbert Chapek, and I adapted it from a sermon written by the Reverend Patty Willis. So this is her version of Reverend Norbert Chapek's life. He was a Czech Unitarian minister and composed the hymn, "View the Starry Realm," when he was detained in the Dachau concentration camp during World War II, just before he was executed. This is his hymn. Great you are beyond conception, God of gods and God of stars. My soul soars with your perception. I escape from prison bars. You, the one within all forming, in my heart and mind and breath. You, my guide through hate's fierce storming, courage in both life and death. Life is yours, in you I grow tall. Seed will come to fruit, I know. Trust that after winter's snowfall, walls will melt, truth will flow. Walls will melt, and truth will flow. Chapek's life and religious path of intention were in no way linear, and maybe your religious journey has been meandering too. He had been a Catholic and then became a Baptist minister, yet he always believed in diversity and found the Unitarians after moving to the United States, where his children began to attend Unitarian Sunday school, and they loved it. And soon he and his wife were attending also. In 1921, he received a grant from the American Unitarian Association to begin a congregation in Prague. Fascism was soon gaining a stronghold in many countries, offering only homogeneity, intending to exterminate all that was different. Norbert Chapek held a very different vision, one of true community, one symbolized by endless, beautiful spring fields of wildflowers. The Third Reich demanded well-ordered rows of perfectly clipped hedges. Chapek saw heaven in the mountain meadows, wildly and diversely in bloom. One Sunday morning in 1923, Chapek preached a sermon comparing the diversity of flowers to the diverse members of his congregation. He said that each person in the worship service was unique and that each was free. That just as innumerable flowers can grow harmoniously together, so too the members of a congregation join together, accepting each other in fellowship, regardless of their differences. At the end of the service, each member took one flower, and in his words, just as it comes, without making any distinction where it came from and whom it represents, to confess that we each accept one another as brothers and sisters without regard to class, race, or other distinction, acknowledging everybody as our friend who is human and wants to do good. Thus, he began the tradition of flower communion, which is practiced by Unitarian Universalist congregations all over the world to this day, and it's a tradition that we engage in today. As you see the array of beautiful flowers before us. Yet even as Chapek's congregation grew, fascism was on the rise all around them. In March of 1939, Hitler declared Czechoslovakia, Chapek's home, part of the Third Reich. Chapek could have escaped because earlier that same year, and this was before the merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists, the American Unitarian Association offered him a position as a minister at large for the Unitarian Fellowship in the United States. He replied that he did not want to desert his people. His intention was to remain. Time passed and things got worse. In the spring of 1941, Čapek publicly declared, "I can no longer bear it. I must speak the truth and not be a coward." He issued a forthright challenge to the Nazis, using his Sunday morning sermon to contradict a speech of Hitler's. 5 days later, the Gestapo came to his home. They charged him with listening to a foreign broadcast, which was illegal at the time, and sent him to Dachau in retaliation for his public stand. These fatal instructions were stamped on his papers: "Return unwanted." In prison, Čapek was undaunted. You might say his ministry there was to inspire his fellow inmates. He used every tool at his disposal: humor, caring, and cheerfulness. However, by this time, he was 70 years old, and he died after only 4 months in the camp in October of 1942. Norbert Čapek lives on in our denomination through the Flower Communion. But you know what? Isn't Norbert Čapek's spirit of inclusion and diversity almost as radical today as it was in 1942? Just look around us. Right now, today, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and immigration are being blamed for any and all of our country's ills. I've heard it said, and it rings true for me, that knowing how to exploit people's grievances is the current administration's superpower. But what is DEI? Put simply, it is a generic label for a wide-ranging efforts to try to ensure that people from all backgrounds, especially those from historically undervalued groups, can gain a foothold and thrive in organizations and in society. The term traces back to the US in the 1960s, when it was used to describe programs that confronted discrimination based on gender, sexual orientation, religion, and disability. Then, after the murder 5 years ago of George Floyd, many corporations dramatically upped their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. However, in 2023, the Supreme Court ruling gutted affirmative action programs, and then the blaming of DEI began. It was called the cause of all manner of things, many of which had nothing to do with DEI at all. And since then, hiring human relations people with DEI expertise has dropped 13%. According to Rolling Stone magazine, DEI terminology has been used to smear women, people of color, and LGBTQIA+ individuals in countless ways. It is vital to highlight this during Pride Month, with trans people so specifically in the crosshairs. People in important positions have been accused of DEI-based incompetence. The smear is used to advance the canard that straight white men have been and are being disadvantaged or discriminated against in today's society, while everyone else, the somehow less deserving everyone else, have been undeservingly elevated. DEI has been blamed for our chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment, the Boeing jet failures, the failure of the Secret Service to protect then-candidate Donald Trump from an assassination attempt, the LA wildfires, the CrowdStrike IT crash, and even the Potomac River midair helicopter airline collision. The current administration's executive orders and threatens to withhold federal funds have led many industry-leading companies, Verizon, Meta, McDonald's, Walmart, Target, Amazon, as well as major law firms to submit to this backward-looking idea. Notably, even Columbia University gave in at first. But not everyone has. Harvard's leadership is pushing back hard, and others are too. Some are simply renaming their programs belonging, accessibility, and engagement, or posting job descriptions using terms like social impact or culture. In short, DEI is being used as a scapegoat for everything some people find wrong with the world. But do you know about scapegoat and where it came from? The term relates to a ritual described in the Hebrew Scriptures. 2 goats were used. One was sacrificed to God. The other was symbolically heaped with the sins of the people and sent out into the desert. That was the scapegoat. Now, I would feel very badly for the poor goat, but I almost wish we could erase this country's sins so simply. But in truth, it takes hard work. Unfortunately, we are accumulating more even as we speak. The Jewish people were scapegoats for the Nazis, who blamed them for the economic problems the Germans faced after World War I. And today we use the word scapegoat to refer to any individual or group that is blamed for the sins or misfortunes of an individual or society. Rather than vilifying people, most, if not all, religions believe that we are all God's children, every one of us. We use, for example, sometimes say that we are all children of one great love. But as for Unitarian Universalists, this represents the core of who we are. Love is at the center of our faith. It is at the very heart of our theology. It is such an essential that essential that we embrace it and be true to it. We need to say this courageously and simply. As a congregation, we need to witness to it. And we have a chance to provide a counter-narrative, one that asserts the beauty of diversity, the justice of equity, and the love of inclusion. And we need to adhere to it and work on it, now, today, and continuously, because we can and should be among those committed to pushing back on the demeaning and destructive DEI narrative. We are the ones, not the only ones, thankfully, but it is certainly up to us to counter in every way we can the bias, conscious and unconscious, that pervades society, the bias that creeps into our brains and comes out in our actions. We need to be a voice, a clear voice, speaking out against the barrage of hateful rhetoric. We must commit to doing all we can to build a world that actually believes that people matter. Everyone matters. Our UU roots stem from the 17th and 18th century. Consider John Locke's philosophy of our inherent rights to life, liberty, and property, that governments are instituted to protect these rights. Does that sound at all familiar? Just think of our Declaration of Independence and the French Revolution's rallying cry of liberté, égalité, fraternité. These ideals truly are deeply rooted in us as Americans. I'd like to think that we all share a sense of fairness. We wonder, maybe even reach out and ask God, if you exist, why do some people starve and others have plenty? Why do some have more than any human should ever be able to desire? In the early days of this country, a great deal of German biblical study entered American discourse. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the renowned essayist, Unitarian minister, and leading transcendentalist, actively disseminated and adapted this new critical method, analyzing religious texts for his American audience. A number of young ministers just graduating from Harvard Divinity School learned from him and found his transcendental thinking attractive. Those ideas then percolated into many Unitarian congregations. Emerson believed that there is a divine spark in each of us, a sacredness in our individual person, that each person deserves the right to grow to their full potential. Following that precept, Unitarians wanted to reform society so that any barriers to that growth would be removed, so that people could grow and flourish regardless of their place in society. And schools were formed, and acknowledgement of women's rights began, and some, though by no means all, transcendentalists and Unitarians started speaking out against slavery. As you use this love of the sacred aspect of each of us is part of us, alive in us today, and we feel it keenly when it is violated, and it surely has been violated these last several months. Just when some of us began to hope that our country could start recognizing and even addressing systemic racism, just when we believed real strides could genuinely be taken toward a more pluralistic and unoppressive society, just when we thought we could finally overcome the historic marginalization and suffering and find a sense of fairness in some form of reparations, or at least a leveling of the playing field, suddenly the mountain we were climbing just got way steeper. Suddenly, untold numbers are fighting for their dignity. Some are fighting for their lives. As our UUA president, Sophia Bentoncourt, puts it, our sheltering role as UU communities of care is crucial right now. It's a lifeline, just being here, right now. And practicing inclusion as a congregation is a form of resistance. And so we affirm today the beauty, justice, and love that Norbert Chapek so exquisitely created and demonstrated with his flower communion, that we are kin with nature and with each other, that we are beautiful in all our forms and colors, that we side with those who are oppressed so that everyone can grow in confidence and purpose, and their glory can shine for the uplifting of us all. And so now let us join together by celebrating our flower communion. And whenever Dr. Chapek conducted his flower communion in Prague, he would say this prayer as he consecrated the flowers. And I just want to thank everyone who brought some flowers and made such a beautiful array up here. And Phoebe even found a tiny, tiny little one that just popped up in our native flower bed. So, Dr. Chapek, infinite spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts, to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us nor sully our relationship, but may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world. And so now it's time for us to partake in the communion. And I ask that each of you come forward, approach the communion vases, and as you do so quietly and reverently, with a sense of how important it is for each of us to address our world and one another with gentleness, justice, and love. I ask that you select a flower different from the one that you brought, that particularly appeals to you. As you take your chosen flower, noting its particular shape and beauty, please remember to handle it with care. It is a gift that someone else brought. It represents that person's unique humanity and therefore deserves your kindest touch. So, please come forward one and all and joyfully take your flower. Chapek's words. Let us renew our resolution sincerely to be real kin, regardless of any kind of bar which estranges one from another. In this holy resolution, may we be strengthened, knowing that we are the family of one great love, that one spirit unites us, and may we endeavor for a more perfect and more joyful life for all. Amen.